looking at, I think, really important words here to show cause and effect, contrast, and condition. And we're on page 6 in our SSP book. So let's take a look at each one of these. I really think this is critical when you're trying to convey thoughts, whether it's in speaking or in writing. Okay? So let's take a look at some of these words. By the way, before we do anything, do you guys know the difference between a clause and a phrase? Can somebody tell me, what do you have to have a clause? So the question is, what's the difference between a clause and a phrase? Does anybody know? Because that's going to be important.
Clause, it has subject and verb.
Excellent, yes.
And phrase, it has just verb.
Excellent.
Without the subject.
Good. He's right. A clause has to have a subject and verb. Okay? A phrase doesn't. Usually a phrase is missing the verb.
Yeah.
A phrase could just be like 2 or 3 words, like a prepositional phrase, and it won't have a verb. Okay? And that's important to realize, especially when we start talking about how to create these 3 different situations. Okay? So if you want to show cause and effect in a sentence, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different ways to do it, which is pretty cool. Okay? So you can show cause and effect. Somebody tell me, what are some words that we use in adverb clauses? We start an adverb clause, and they give you 4 different options. What are they?
Because.
I could use a because to start an adverb clause to show cause and effect. What else? Since. So that or now that. Okay? Of course, the king of cause and effect adverb clauses is because. Right? Somebody give me a nice example sentence using because.
Because you're smart, I'm going to test you.
Because, okay, because you're smart, what, comma or no comma?
Comma.
Good. Whenever the adverb clause comes first, put a comma. The only exception to that, an adverb clause of contrast, like although, whereas, it doesn't matter. It always gets a comma. So whenever you're creating a sentence with an adverb clause of contrast down here, always put a comma, no matter whether it comes first or last. Okay, because you're smart, what did you say? I'm going to test you? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. I am going to test you. I like that. So here's your because, your adverb signal word. Where's the subject?
I am.
Hold on, I made a mistake.
You made a mistake, yeah. Yeah.
Now where's the subject? Where's the verb? Good. And then you have a predicate adjective, or an adjective that's acting as a kind of like the object in a sentence, right? So we'll just call it the object. All right. Over here in the main clause, where's the subject? Verb. And then to test you, this is an infinitive, right, acting like the object of the sentence. So, very good. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about cause and effect words. We mentioned you can use because. You can also use since. Can somebody just throw since in there and see if it works?
Since you're smart,
I'm going to test you.
It works. Okay, it's just like a because. Now that. Somebody test that one. Ziggy, read it with now that.
Now that you are smart, I'm going to test you.
Do you see the difference there? So it must have been sometime before you weren't so smart. Maybe you're at the end of the class, right? Hopefully you're smarter by the end of the class. So anyway, you guys, this now that means now that this situation is true or whatever, here's the result. So it is a little bit different. You can use that in a different way to show immediacy. So that. So you can try plugging that one in. Ahmed, what does it say? What do you think it means if I put that there?
What, so that?
Yeah.
You want it in a sentence?
Yeah. Just put it in the same one.
So that you are smart, I'm going to test you.
See, it's like I'm trying to make you something, right? So that you're smart, I'm going to test you. It's a little awkward in that sentence. Can someone think of a better sentence? Yeah.
I'm going to test you so that you are smart.
See, you gotta flip it. Good job. So with this one, and then your result, so that you, and it sounds better with the future, right? So that you will be smart. Of course, that's only true if you believe that testing forces you to study, which makes you smarter, right? But I like you flipped it and it makes sense. You switched the cause and the cause and effect and used it correctly. So that's good. All right. Now let's take a look at some transition cause and effect words. Okay. In the book, what do they have?
Therefore,
Yeah. So they use therefore, and what else?
consequently,
And consequently. Good. By the way, what word form is this, consequently?
Adverb.
It's an adverb, actually. But it has the idea of showing cause and effect. So something happened, and here's the result. Can you somebody give me a sentence using consequently? So this works best with two sentences. Yeah. So put the effect, right? I mean, we could even use this same idea. And say something like, I'm going to test you.
Yeah.
Consequently, you're going to get smarter. Hopefully. So the punctuation here, really, it kind of looks like this. Put the cause here, put a period, and then say consequently, and put a comma, and then put the result. Does that make sense? That's probably the easiest way to do it. The other way you can do it, if you want to make it one sentence, you can put the cause in a sentence, right? Like, I'm going to test you, semicolon, consequently, comma, and then put the result, if you want to keep it all one sentence. See how that works? And the same thing is true of therefore. So I could say something like, I am going to test you, semicolon, therefore, you're going to improve in your English skills. So exact same thing you can do with both of these, therefore and consequently. Are you okay? The other interesting thing you can do with these is you can actually stick them on the end. Put a comma, so you can say, I'm going to test you, and you put a semicolon, and then you could say, so that your English skills will improve, comma, consequently. It's kind of interesting, but a lot of people don't know you can stick those on the end like that too. Does that make sense? So you put your consequence, put your cause, complete sentence, semicolon, put the result or the effect, and then put a comma consequently. Just make sure you get the punctuation right if you do it that way. Are you okay? So you're learning different ways to create sentences using the transition words. So you learned 3 different ways there. All right, let's look at another one. Conjunction. What conjunction shows cause and effect? So, kind of cool. So I can actually, can anybody take this sentence and use so?
You're smart, so I'm going
Here you go. You are smart. Comma or no comma? Good. Comma. So, I'm going to test you. And that's the configuration. You have an independent clause connected with a comma coordinating conjunction, and then your other independent clause. Cause is on the front, result or effect is on the back side. So there's another way to write a cause and effect using a conjunction. Okay? And that's so. So you know when you're writing an essay and your teacher says you need to restate the thesis statement in the conclusion? Well, guess what? I've just shown you 4 different ways you can create a sentence, right? Using cause and effect. So these are ways you can restate a thesis statement, for example, in a different way, using a completely different format. All right, hey, listen, let's take a break. You can hit the off button on that, thank you. And we'll... All right, cool. So, hey, let's go to because of and due to. What are these, by the way? Prepositions. See, if you take a because and you add of, which is a preposition, or due to, which is a preposition, then you're no longer creating a clause, you're creating a phrase. So this is pretty cool. You can do the same thing, only with a phrase. So if you take because of, let's make a sentence. I failed the test. So there's your cause. I failed the test because of... Yeah, you can blame someone else. Because of him. I like that. So anyway, what you've done is created a cause and effect prepositional phrase. And notice, where's the verb? There is no verb. It's a phrase. Okay? So that's how that works. Due to is the same thing. So I can say I failed the test due to him. Or due to my lack of study. Something like that. Yeah. You okay? All right. So we just learned about 10 different ways that you guys can talk about cause and effect using an adverb clause with because, since, now that, and so that. We talked about how you can create a cause and effect in a sentence using transition words like therefore and consequently. And we talked about how they can move around in the sentence and how to punctuate it. You can also use a good old-fashioned coordinating conjunction with 2 independent clauses, right? With the cause, comma, coordinating conjunction so, and then put the effect in the second independent clause. Then we talked about how you can also use prepositional phrases starting with because and due. You can say because of and due to and create a cause and effect situation using an independent clause with a phrase on the end, a prepositional phrase. You okay? All right. Let's go to how to show contrast. Again, we're going to have the same categories going across the board. Somebody tell me, Ahmed in the back over there, tell me what words do they have here for contrast? For an adverb clause. What do you see, Ahmed?
Which one?
We're on the chart on contrast. We're on page 6. Page 6. And we're looking at the second category. Which words can we, what adverb starter words can we use for contrast? According to the chart.
Even though.
Do you see it out there?
Although,
Yeah. So we can use
do,
even. We can use even though.
although,
Good. We can use although.
though.
And we can use though. All right. Someone want to try to make a sentence showing contrast using an even though adverb clause?
Even though he studied hard, he couldn't pass the exam.
Even though he studied hard, comma or no comma?
Comma.
Is there always a comma or just sometimes?
Always.
Always, 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 always. With these particular words, okay? With these three, it doesn't matter. Okay? Always put a comma, even if it comes last. All right. Even though he studied hard,
He couldn't pass the exam.
good. He couldn't pass the exam. Nice. And that shows contrast. Man, the guy studied so hard, but he still couldn't pass it, right? So that's a contrast.
Right.
Couldn't.
Good, thank you. He couldn't pass the exam. Thank you very much. So, could we say although? You could, same thing. Although he studied hard, he couldn't pass the exam. Could you use though? Same exact idea. Though he studied hard, he could not pass the exam. Everybody okay? All right, cool. Now, let's take a look at using transitions to show cause and effect. What words do we have for transition words?
However,
Good. You've got however.
nevertheless,
What's that?
nevertheless,
Nevertheless. What else we got? Oop, 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 wait. Don't do that. Gotta get my E in there. Left knee out. Nevertheless.
nonetheless,
Nonetheless.
on
Okay.
the other hand,
Keep leaving my E's out here. I'm right up against it. Nonetheless, on the other hand. Cool. So again, punctuation is going to work very similar to what we talked about up here with these. Okay, so you can. It's actually the same for this one, this one, this one, and then down here they actually gave us a. On the other hand, it's actually a prepositional phrase, but it can be used as a transition, I guess. I'm not sure why they put it there, but they did. All right. Can somebody give me a sentence using however to show contrast? Give me a new sentence, Ziggy.
she studied hard. However, she did it.
Yeah. She studied hard. However,
She didn't
pass the exam. What's the punctuation need to look like here?
Comma after however.
Okay, definitely a comma.
and before the however.
Is it a comma?
Comma.
You could. This is an option. You could do this and capitalize it. That's an option. Okay? Semicolon. Good. If you're going to leave it all together, you need a semicolon there. Okay? That's possible. I could also say she studied hard. Semicolon. She didn't pass the exam, however. So I could move this, put a comma on the end, and put however on the end. That's also possible. The period.
There is a comma in the
Which one? An IQ test Let me go. Yeah, good question. Let's take a look at that. Let's see what we're doing on that page. Go back to page 5. She's asking a great question. An IQ test, comma, however, comma, can be an accurate measure of intelligence only if there is such a thing as general intelligence. Good question. Why did they put a comma on the front there instead of a semicolon? Let me ask you a question. In this construction, you have an independent clause, right? Up front. Is there an independent clause up front? No. See, this only works like this when you have an independent clause, and then you use the transition word, and then you have another independent clause. In that sentence, it's actually just, it's being used inside the sentence itself, kind of like near the beginning, okay? So the point is, when you're using it inside the independent clause, like up front, then, and that's why you see over here, like over here it's just on the end, right? But even if I move it up front and I put a period here, then it gets a comma after it. So even if you shift it to inside, and they found a creative way to use it inside the independent clause, then yes, put commas on either side. Make sense? You okay? Okay. All right, let's take a look. And let's just try it. Can I say nevertheless? She studied hard. And let's just go with this arrangement. It works in all the positions, right? She studied hard, nevertheless. She didn't pass the exam. That works. She studied hard, nonetheless. She didn't pass the exam. That works. She studied hard. On the other hand, she didn't pass the exam. Now listen, you can do that, and it works. The only thing I would say, it works. You can say that. She studied hard. On the other hand, comma, she didn't pass the exam. The truth is, anytime you stick a prepositional phrase on the front of a sentence, okay, or even in the middle like this, but if I were to put that on the front and put a period here, the same rules follow. You're going to put a comma, even if it's a prepositional phrase on the front. So it actually functions the same way. The only difference would be is if you put on the other hand at the end, there's no comma at the end. Okay? I know it's a lot, but at least if you get some of this information in your head, it's going to keep you from getting tags in your writing and help your writing a lot. Any questions on that? Okay. Now let's jump over here to conjunctions. Is there a good conjunction we can use?
But.
Good.
Anyway, yes.
Yeah. So you can say but, say what you're going to say, and then put anyway on the end. It's optional. You can also say yet, and then optional still. So let's just use the same sentence. Can somebody reconstruct Ahmed number 2? Can you try one of these in this with using this information? Could you reconstruct it to use a conjunction? Matter of fact, you come on up here. Can you rewrite it and put the conjunction in with the right punctuation? Use but or yet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then fix the punctuation if it's needed.
She studied hard. She didn't pass the exam yet. Oh,
You know what? Can you fix my anyway? I left the Y out. I'm having trouble with my letters. Can you see anyway up there? But anyway? Can you fix that? I misspelled anyway. A-N-Y.
we can anyway.
Yeah, fix that one.
Anyway.
A-N-Y. N-Y. Thank you, sir. Yeah, and then rewrite that. Put the information in the sentence for us.
She studied hard, but she didn't pass the exam.
Yeah, what's the punctuation?
But.
Put the but in there.
But there's
Fix
no
that. Yeah, what do? Erase it. If you need to erase it, erase it. Where does the comma go?
comma after what?
Are you sure?
No, before.
No,
Before? Yeah.
no, I think
No comma.
there's no comma.
I think
No, come
before. But
Before?
Well, let me ask a question. When do you put a comma with a coordinating conjunction? What has to be on either side of it?
before.
You need an independent clause on either side of it. And then you got to have a comma there. If there's two independent clauses.
Before.
Yeah, it needs a comma. Yep,
There's independent.
yep, yeah. Good job. So here's the rule. You got it. The rule is, if it's an independent clause, followed by another independent clause, and you use a coordinating conjunction, you got to put a comma here. Only. Okay? And that's the big difference between transition words and conjunctions.
I can switch it also. I can say she didn't pass the exam, but comma she studied up. Or rather come after.
Listen, you want to make sure you put the cause, the but, and then the but should be followed by the effect. Well, this is contrast. By the contrasting thing. Can't you switch it? She didn't pass the exam. You could, I guess. But she studied hard. I don't know. I like to put the thing that's in opposition to the first statement, last. It makes more sense. And when you're showing a contrast, make a statement about something and then show the contrast second. It seems like it sounds better to me. Is it wrong to do it the other way? I don't think so. I think you can do it either way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do it both ways. But I think it's best to show the contrast in the second part. All right. And now listen, you could, if you want, to add emphasis. So you could do that. I studied hard, or she studied hard, but she didn't pass the exam anyway. See that? It's optional. You can also put yet there. She studied hard, yet she didn't pass the exam. Hold on. Someone tell me, where would you put this? She studied hard.
She
But she
didn't.
still didn't pass the exam, yeah.
That's interesting. She still didn't pass the exam.
Yeah, comma yet.
Good. Yeah, you need a comma there.
You put there.
Yet she still didn't pass the exam. Good. Everybody okay? Yeah. Yeah.
So teacher, if we use because there is a independent sentence, then because then another independent sentence, so we need a comma for the because.
Only listen. When you use a because, a couple things. You're showing a cause and effect. Okay? Remember, when you use a yet, you're showing a contrast. So that's one thing. Just remember, a because shows a cause and effect, and a yet or a but shows a contrast. So that's the first thing, okay? The other thing is, when you use a because, you're creating an adjective clause, right? And the rule is when the adjective clause, when it's a cause and effect adjective clause, it only gets a comma when it comes first. When it comes second, it doesn't. Now I told you be careful. Whenever you're using these three, showing contrast, with an adverb clause, it always, whenever you show contrast, you always need to put a comma. No matter what. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, let's take a look at prepositions. Do they give us any good prepositions?
Despite and
Yeah. They give us two to show contrast. Despite and in spite of. Can somebody take this information and rewrite it for me so that I'm using a preposition in there? Prepositional phrase. Remember, in this particular construction, there's one sentence, not two sentences. Despite. Now remember, prepositions are followed by objects. So we got to turn the verb into a noun object. So good. So she turned the verb into a noun by making it into a what? A gerund. Good. So despite
Studying hard.
Okay. Good. Despite studying hard. Comma or no comma? Good. Remember I said when you put a prepositional phrase at the beginning of the sentence, you put a comma. Despite studying hard, comma.
She didn't pass the exam.
Yes, she didn't pass the exam. Very good. And of course, can somebody use in spite of? Omar, can you create the sentence using in spite of?
In spite of. She's studying hard. In spite of, she didn't pass the exam.
You could do that. You could say, first of all, you could just replace this, right? And you could just say, in spite of studying hard, she didn't pass the exam. Now you created kind of a different idea. You said, in spite of not passing the exam, you could say something like, she continued to study hard. See, even though she was discouraged, she didn't pass, she kept working hard. So you can show that contrast by saying what you said. Yeah. Are you okay? Okay. All right, now let's do the last one. And let's talk about conditions. Yeah.
She didn't pass the exam in spite of studying hard.
That's the best way to say it.
So we need a comma before in spite of.
What's the sentence?
She didn't pass the exam.
She didn't pass the exam in spite of studying hard. And the question is, do you need a comma? What do you guys think? Does she need a comma?
No.
No. Because when it's on the end, you don't with prepositional phrases. Just on the front. Okay. All right. Good. So now, let's do the last category, conditions. Let's take a look at this. So you create an adverb clause. You can use any of the words. What are they?
If.
Unless.
You got if,
Unless.
unless,
Only if.
only if,
Even if.
even if,
Whether or not.
and whether or not. Nice. And remember, you're creating an adverb clause when you use these. Okay, so the rules are similar. The punctuation rules are the similar as cause and effect. So let me ask you a question. Do you guys remember with conditionals, how many conditionals are there?
7.
No, conditionals. So there's 3. There's a first class condition, a second class condition, and a third class condition. And we're going to talk in depth about those. Okay? A condition is, it's creating something that is true or untrue based on the reality of a situation. Okay? So we have if conditions that are true in the present or future. We have if clauses, a second class if clause, it is untrue in the present or future. And then you have a third class if clause, which is untrue in the past. Did you guys have that? Yeah, I think you did. Okay. Just a little review. Okay? And of course, you know the verb tense in the if clause, conditional clause, and the result clause are affected by the condition that you're creating. Right? Anyway, can anyone give me a conditional using if? Yes.
The weather be nice. I will
Okay.
get a second.
If the weather is nice, comma or no comma?
Come.
Good. What did you say?
I will go home.
I will go home. And not die. Yeah. It's sub-zero weather, right? Yeah. All right. So, again, the thing I want you to notice is the comma, and you just created a condition. All right? And is that a first, second, or third class condition?
First.
It's a first class condition. He used what tense in the if clause? Present. It's always present in a first class condition. And then you decide. Is it, you talking about future or present? Future. So it's future. Good. Can you use unless? Remember, what is an unless like? Anybody remember that? Unless is like a...
If not.
Yeah, it's like an if not. So can somebody turn this into an unless condition? You could say that.
I will go home unless
Unless I want to go.
I will go home.
unless the weather is nice.
Comma or no comma?
No comma.
Unless the weather
It's nice.
Yeah, so maybe you're at the park with buddies. Or, yeah, right? And one of them asks you what you're going to do. And you say something like, I'll go home unless the weather is nice. Then if it is nice, then I'm going to stay here, right? Yeah, and keep playing. Okay. So, only if. Only if is interesting. And by the way, we're going to go back through the chapter here, and we're going to look at more examples of each of these. Okay? But only if is a tricky little guy. Can somebody give me an example of an only if?
I will go home only if the weather be nice.
I will go to school only if the weather is bad.
The weather is nice. I will go home only if the weather is nice. So let me ask you a question. Based on this, will he go home if it's raining?
No.
No. Will he go home if there's a storm?
No.
Will he go home if there's an earthquake? What's the only situation he'll go home?
The weather is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Only if the weather's nice. Now, here's what's weird. If I take, because conditionals, you're supposed to be able to put them on both sides, right? If I take this and I put it on the front, what happens?
Have to put comma.
Okay. So let's try it. Only if the weather
Change the meaning.
is nice. No, it doesn't. Anybody? Comma? You guys are good? Comma? There is a problem with this. Can anybody tell me? What's wrong with the sentence? There's a mistake. That's okay. Only if the weather is nice.
I would.
No. This is what makes only if a troublemaker.
So whether we
No.
Be.
No. The issue is in the second part. There's a problem over here. at the word order. So this is what's strange about only if. For whatever reason, this is a negative. It's a negative idea. Remember we said it's like if not. Whenever you stick a negative on the front of a sentence, these are inverted. It's like a negative inversion.
I will not.
Okay? Yeah, I know, it sounds weird. But it's a special thing that happens with an only type of a conditional. And it actually happens with any negative that you put on the front of a sentence. The inversion, the thing that's weird about this is the inversion doesn't happen in the adverb clause. It happens in the main clause. And it only happens when the only if comes first. And there's actually lots of other phrases that start with only when, only after. And it creates the same situation. Are you with me? You okay?
Yeah.
So really in your book, if it were me, I'd circle that one and just put a little note by it so you don't forget to invert the subject and verb in the main clause when the only if. It only happens when this is at the front. Okay? And we're going to talk about that again in the future. So listen, they give even if. It's kind of similar to an only if, but a little different. It's kind of like, in a way, it's kind of like the inverse of only if. So even if the weather is bad, let's think of it like, I'm inside, I'm tired of being inside, I want to go on a picnic, right? So I say something like, I'm going out, if it's raining, I'm going on that picnic, man. I'm sick of being inside all winter. So I say something to my son like, man, son, even if it snows 3 feet tomorrow, we're going outside to play, right? Because he's going crazy. So I say even if, and I put something down, even if this happens, we're still going to do this. Does that make sense?
What's the difference between even though and even if?
You mean even if and only if?
No, even if and even though. What's that meaning?
Okay, so you're looking at the difference between even if and even though. Okay, the main difference is even though shows contrast, okay, and the even if shows a condition. Does that make sense? Yeah. So one's showing condition, one's showing a contrast. Okay. And then this one's, and again, we'll go over these in more detail, but whether or not. Can somebody come up with a sentence that works well with whether or not?
Whether or not, whether be nice, I will go.
There you go. Whether or not the weather is nice, I am still going on a picnic. Or I am still playing outside with my son. So it's very similar to even if. Yeah. Are you guys okay? Alright, now let's jump over. So we talked about adverb clauses of condition, if, unless, only if, even if, whether or not. Looked at some examples. Let's jump over to transitions and conditionals. And there aren't many of them. What do they got there for you?
Otherwise.
Yeah. So they have otherwise. So they give you otherwise as a transition word you can use to show a condition. Can somebody create a sentence?
Study hard, otherwise.
There you go. Study hard. Punctuation?
Comma. After, before otherwise.
What's the sentence first? Otherwise,
You'll fail.
you will fail. Now, so where are you putting a comma?
Before and
Here?
after.
Good. You need a comma here. What goes here?
Semicolon.
Good. Yeah. Okay. Okay, conjunctions. What's the conjunction we use to show a condition?
Or, no.
Yeah, or, and then the else is an option. Think of or to show two choices, right? I will study at ELS or IUPUI. But it shows a condition, right? So let's take a look at it. Can somebody give me a sentence?
I'll go to Chicago or
Yeah.
LA.